Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And I know you're going to enjoy the dynamic lady we're interviewing today. Her name is Brie Schmidt, and she's a real powerhouse in the Chicago area, in the Milwaukee area. And she's got a great story. She's got an awesome event coming up that we're going to talk about. And we're just very blessed to have her on the show. Brie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about why real estate. It's tell us where you're at now and how you got there. If you take a few minutes.
Sure. So for me, I'm a lifetime investor or a lifestyle investor. So a few years ago, I had bought a property with the intention of we bought a 3-flat with the intention of deconverting it to a single family at some point. As our family grew, we would have options to take one floor and add it together and then make it a big single family house. About 9 months after we purchased that property, my father passed away from cancer. And the real kicker was that he passed away literally one day before he was set to retire. And the few years before he had passed, he'd always talked about, when I retire, I'm going to go do this. And when I retire, I'm going to go to Thailand, or I'm going to go to Europe, or and he never got that opportunity to do all the things he talked about doing. And it really messed with me when I was thinking, at that point I was 30, and I was working a corporate job. I had spent a few years building my career. I was traveling a ton. I was working 60 hours a week. And it dawned on me, what if I don't get to enjoy all the things that I'm thinking about doing when I retire? So how can I retire sooner? And real estate became the answer to that question. So we started buying properties and all building around the lifestyle goal. And for me, the lifestyle goal is being able to do what I want when I want to do it. So every decision that I've made over the last 5-6 years, every business direction I've gone in or things that I've involved myself in is all involved with, how does this affect my lifestyle goal? How does this affect my ability to do what I want when I want to do it? So through that, we started buying properties in 2011, 2012, 2013. Things were buying one property a year, learning the business, building the foundation. 2014, I bought 10 properties. 2015, I bought another 13. And then so on and so forth. So now I have a portfolio of 31 properties and over 92 units. And I was able to quit my corporate job in 2014 and essentially retire.
One plex at a time.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fantastic. I love that. Of course, you started at the perfect time as well. Very sorry about your father. That's so gripping and such a powerful message, because you're so right. I mean, so many people achieve to be happy or focus on their retirement. Well, they could be supplementing all that with a full-time job. I mean, I've interviewed so many people on this show that have built multi-million-dollar portfolios on the side, and then ultimately they can leave. That's quite a message. So I know you're in the Chicago area, and so let's talk about how you did this. Can we break this down a little bit? Because I've got so many people on the show that want to get started. It's kind of ironic that you bought that 3-unit to actually expand into it. I try to push people to if they're going to buy a house and they're not so concerned about the white picket fence, to go buy a 4-plex or a triplex and start your investment career that way. Live in a unit, live for free or at a reduced rate, and then have that be your first investment property. In fact, Grant Cardone got into it with me on the last interview I had with him, because he said, go to 16 units immediately. And we had a vet ask a question about, using their VA to buy a 4-plex, and he and I kind of went toe to toe a little bit on that, because I'm like, yeah, if you've got free money, use it to buy a plex. But let me ask you, how did you buy your plexes? Did you do it all with your own money? Did you bring investors in? How did you structure your deals, if we can get a little granular?
Of course. That's a great question. So the first property we did with an FHA, owner occupied, 5% down loan. The second one I've never lived in. That one was just a matter of, we had moved, we were living for free.
Right.
Yeah. So we had been saving one income up until we had moved. Now we had that income saved plus the money that we were saving in rent. that led to the purchase of the second one, which was
that's fantastic. Can I stop you for 1 second, guys? I hope you heard that. Okay, if you do this, they were living for free, able to save money on rent, and use that money to springboard into the next one. That's a huge clue, my friends. For those of you that haven't taken action yet, I'm sorry, I just had to draw attention to that.
So I am a managing broker of Second City Real Estate, which is a Chicago-based brokerage that works with investors. And that's exactly what we teach.
Awesome.
I'm called every day from people like, hey, I want to learn about investing. And my first thing is, let's talk about your finances, right? Where are you at with your money? Don't buy something because you only have X amount of dollars. But there's two ways to make money, either make more money or save money. So let's talk about budgeting, right? Being aware of your finances. Where can you cut stuff?
That's awesome. Good for you.
I still follow the same budget that I had 7 years ago when I started all this. And it's super important to me. Like, even when I go to buy a new pair of shoes, to me, it's $100 pair of shoes, but what is that costing me in terms of my real estate investing ability to buy more property?
When I had 200 units, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. I could have lived much better than that, but that's how you do it, guys. Okay, you cut now to play later. You grind now to play later. You lower your immediate needs to have incredible resources later. So awesome! You've given us some great messages here. Yep.
So my car is a 2010.
Right.
Scratches all over it, but I don't care. I don't, it's not something that I need. I need more apartment buildings and I need more cash flow, but I don't need, a Lexus with a $600 a month payment. That's ridiculous. But yeah, so then we got the second property in Chicago. The third property was also in Chicago. That was an owner occupied property. And that was not our original intention. Our original goal was to buy 4 apartment buildings. And then we would buy our single family dream house, pay them all off with the cash flow, and then retire in 20 years. The third property came up, and it was an estate sale in a great neighborhood. It needed a lot of work, so we did a pretty large renovation of it. And then,
but you moved into it though.
We did.
Yeah, so you were able to get great financing again.
Great financing.
Yeah, see, that's how you do it, guys. Now, don't play with that, by the way. Don't say you're going to move in and not move in. You actually need to move in, but you don't want to mess around with that. But you can, you don't have to stay in that first fourplex or triplex or duplex for more than a couple of years. You can absolutely trade up and do another one. Awesome.
The advice I always give my clients is, if you're doing this right, you're only going to live there for a year or two. Oh, right. And there you go. Can you handle the quote unquote sacrifice, right, of maybe living in a smaller unit or a neighborhood that's a little bit too far from the train or whatever it may be, for the long-term gain of having your tenants pay your mortgage? It's as simple as that. But yeah, the third property was kind of the catalyst for us because, again, it was a rehab property. So we did the renovations on it and we did a cash out refinance 6 months later, and we're able to pull out a decent amount of money. And that is when things sort of shifted for us. We were looking at buying again in Chicago. Chicago is a pretty well-balanced market. It's not a cash flow market. It's definitely a cash flow and appreciation market. So it's going to take lots of properties to actually supplement your income in this market. And our property price ranges are from $400,000 to $600,000. So it's not like you could buy, 10 properties in a year.
Right. On your own.
On your own, of course.
Right.
So then I started looking at other markets. So I went and looked at Milwaukee, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Kansas City.
All great markets. Yeah. Okay.
All great markets for a cash flow play.
Right.
So my thoughts on it were, Chicago builds my long-term wealth appreciation, or my wealth.
Right.
I needed a market that would pay my monthly bills. So I landed on Milwaukee. It was a market that I felt comfortable with. Nothing wrong with the other markets, but it's set up very much like Chicago, which is a dense urban environment where a major part of the housing stock is 2 to 4 units. So
fantastic.
You're able to get urban properties within a close distance of downtown, but you're not necessarily sacrificing on tenant class because every other property is a 2 to 4 unit. So there's a lot of renters that rent those kind of buildings.
Fantastic.
So I started to go up there. I learned the market.
Talk about how you studied that market. Do you mind sharing a little bit of some tips there, please? Thank you.
Yeah. It's not easy learning a new market. especially when you're starting from scratch. So
right.
what I did is I got referrals of 4 agents in the area.
Perfect.
And said, listen, I've got X amount of dollars to spend. I'm going to come up for the day. I want you to show me, like, if you had this much money to spend, what would you buy and why? So I want to spend a few hours with you going to tour properties. And I want you to explain to me why you're picking this area, why you would invest with this. And so I went with those 4 agents, and that kind of gave me a crash course in the market.
Love it.
They all had different perspectives. They all
different opinions. Sure.
I found a market that I was comfortable with.
You mean a sub-market?
A sub-market.
Right. Okay.
Comfortable with. And it just so happened that we were doing a showing. The agent on the other end that was showing the property, as we walked up to the property, one of the tenants was sitting on the front porch, and he was like, "Oh, hey, how was your kid's soccer game?" And then like we run to the other tenant, and he was like, "Oh, how's your mother doing?" And he just seemed to know the tenants, and that's how we kind of operate our business in Chicago. It's
the best way. Take care of your tenants, and they will take care of you. There's no greater expense than turnover. If you can keep your tenants happy, they will pay market rent. They won't move. If they love you, they will stay. And that needs to be your focus, guys. Whenever you do this, even in a property as small as a duplex. Yep. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a 3-unit property. And as we were leaving the showing, I'd asked him, do you have any other properties? And he was like, well, actually, I'm the seller of this property. So I'm the seller and the manager and the agent. This is my only property, but my in-laws own a bunch of properties in the area. So we ended up going under contract for 7 properties, all within their family.
Just because you asked the question. Guys, that's a clue. Okay. You have to ask. If you don't ask, you're never going to know. Beautiful. Love it. Awesome.
Yeah. And I really liked how Is
he your manager?
He was.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I mean, God, he sounds like the perfect property manager. By the way, guys, if you're buying smaller units out of state, a small broker like that can be your best resource as a property manager. And, what you'll do is you'll let one of the tenants, you give them $100 off the rent or maybe a little more. They'll keep the place clean. They'll maybe help with showings. They'll be your eyes on the place. But then you have a broker that just oversees everything. And that's a great framework for managing small properties long distance. So you're giving us tons of great stuff here. Keep going.
Yeah. It just so happened that he was a teacher. He had so he was out of school by like 2:30. And their family had they've got their contractors, their painters, their plumbers all in house. They've been investing in the area for 50 years.
So you got access to all of those resources, and that's another great tip, guys. When you find someone you like, get referrals. They know who the best people are, the best attorneys, the best title companies. Maybe if it's a property management company, the best brokers. The banks to go to, the contractors. That's how you do it, is with referrals. So you don't have any seminars, with learning experiences, we like to call them, with the wrong vendors. So awesome. Keep going.
And that's a great point. I'll just touch on that real quick, because I host a meetup in the Chicago area for investors, and it's been going on for 3.5 years. And I love it so much. I don't ask for anything out of it. We don't charge anything for it.
What's it called, so we can give it a shout out?
Yeah, it's the Chicago Investors Meetup.
Chicago Investors Meetup. And while we're on it, guys, she is having a conference called the Midwest Real Estate Networking Conference in Chicago on May 11th through the 13th. And I do not promote these things, but they are not having anybody go there to sell anything. It's a networking event. It's a training event. And I absolutely am behind things like that. I mean, in fact, we just had my boot camp recently, and we spent a ton of time having people network and create relationships. And you guys know I've got that closed Facebook group for multifamily on Facebook. And if you're not on there, you're crazy, because there are people connecting all over the country. And you just go to multifamilycommunity.com, and it's a direct link to that Facebook group. There's like 5,500 people on there. It's only been up for 3 months, people connecting all over the country. But I am absolutely behind Brie's here, May 11th through the 13th, Midwest Real Estate Networking Conference. How do they get information to that, Brie?
Yeah, the website is midwestresummit.com.
Perfect. MidwestREsummit.com. It'll be in the show notes, guys, but I'm absolutely behind that. Highly recommend. If you're in the Chicago area, it's kind of a no-brainer. Okay? All right, Brie, please continue.
Yeah. But so I would go back to the referral thing. I just had a situation where a client of mine bought a property. We found out it's been flooding for 20 years. The whole sewage system under the property was routed incorrectly. That is something that I've never had to deal with. And I'm so lucky to have made friends. And, my friends are flippers and developers over the years at these networking events that I'm able to just text them and say, hey, listen, like, here's what's going on. I need only like your top referral. Don't give me someone that you're a maybe about, because this is a situation that needs.
That's a big one. Yeah, that's a tough one. That is no fun, breaking floors up and rerouting sewer lines. That's a big one. You need somebody good. Okay, that's and you were able to call and find the right person just because of the networking. Because you're out there meeting people. Guys, this is and I really push this at my event. It's so critical. This is a relationship business. It's a team sport. So you want to align yourself with the best people in the business, and you do that through referrals. Awesome, Maureen. Great tip.
Then we ended up, we bought 10 properties in 6 months, and then we bought another 8 properties.
Let me stop you there. How did you finance those deals? How did you put that together?
Great question. Commercial financing.
Okay, so you went to a local bank and you did a package loan on the whole group of properties.
So
okay.
I went with it's a regional bank.
That's the best, guys. If you and you heard me talk, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but I want to keep interjecting stuff here because it's really relevant. Guys, when you go into a market, you want to develop relationships with local or regional banks, not the Bank of America, the BB&T, the Fifth Third, the Chase, the Wells Fargo, none of those. You want the regional banks, and because you can develop relationships with those people, and you absolutely want to do that. If they see you, they see your integrity, they see your passion, you can, they will sway the loan committee because they want your business, and they're in the relationship business. You want to set up an account there. You want to start that relationship. I mean, I don't know if you heard me talk about I interviewed a kid probably a year and a half ago in Michigan that bought $1 million property for $5,000 down with bank financing because of that relationship. So those are the kind of banks you want to go to. So you went to a regional bank, you got the loan, you got the financing there. Fantastic. Yeah.
Well, kind of a backstory. I had a really hard time finding a bank that would work with me. At that point, I'd only owned 3 properties. I'd only been doing this for a few years. I was out of state.
That's a big hurdle, by the way, guys. When you're going, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to add things here because that's relevant. When you're going into another city and you're going to want to start relationships with the banks there, and if you don't live there, that needs to be one of the first questions out of your mouth. First of all, do you loan on multifamily? Secondly, would you do business with an out-of-state investor? And they may not, because they want local relationships. So that's a question you need to ask right out of the gate, so you're not wasting your time developing a relationship with a bank that'll never really want to work with you. Okay.
Yeah, it was. I must have called 20 banks, and that they all just said no. They didn't want to see the numbers. It was, it was a no-go at that point. So I actually got into contact with a broker, a commercial real estate or commercial lending broker, and he facilitated the relationship. So I sent him over all my financials, my profile, my PFS, the portfolio I was looking at, and he called me in a day and said, I've got someone that's willing to do this. I'm going to charge 2 points on the first deal. And
worth every penny.
And I've done 23 loans with that bank.
Yep. Fantastic. And it's a local Milwaukee bank?
It's regional banks. I think
regional bank, but their footprint is in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Okay.
I think they're in maybe 18 states.
Fantastic.
But yeah, it was,
and that's the advantage of using a broker, because you can go direct to banks, but brokers will have relationships with numerous banks, and their job is to know what banks do, what sort of programs they have, what they like, what sectors of real estate they prefer to loan in, and so that's what you had to do. So awesome, and now you've got a great relationship with a good bank.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because the banks will change their appetite. They might not want any small multifamily, and they only want large, and then they might switch up their portfolio, might get too heavy in one area. So that's where a broker comes in and said, in 24 hours, he did what I had done or I had not accomplished in about 20 hours.
Awesome.
So that's how we started with so it was commercial financing. It was 18 properties in 12 months.
Did you get help for the equity, or were you able to pull it off yourself?
I was able to do the first 10 on my own.
Good for you.
The next 8, I have a wonderful brother who owns his house free and clear. And he let me do a line of credit against his house as a favor because he loves his sister.
Oh, that's beautiful. Awesome. Awesome.
Under the agreement that I had 18 months to pay it back. Which
wow.
I did. So
no kidding.
He let me like $140,000. And that's how I did the next set of properties.
Fantastic.
It was
Fantastic.
at that point that, people had been approaching me about wanting to work with me and looking to partner. I had 2 guys in particular that I had been talking to for about a year at this point, and every month when I would do my own numbers, I would send them an email, like, hey, here's what I'm seeing in the market, or, here's some problems we had this month and how I handled it, or I'm looking at some new properties. Here's my analysis on them. Here's what I'm thinking. So at that point, once I had hit my personal investment goal, which was we hit it in May of 2015, was when I was ready to take on partners. And it was great because, again, we'd been talking for a year. So they already knew me. They already knew my decision-making abilities. They already trusted me. We already had a relationship established. So I think one of them has been to Milwaukee once before we bought, and one of them didn't come to Milwaukee until over a year after we bought.
Because you developed relationships, you took your time, you got to know them, they got to know you. Guys, this is a team sport and it's a relationship sport. And when you're doing partnerships, you really need to know who you're going to do business with. And, I give my coaching students this big long list of preparatory questions, asking the hard questions up front. But you also have to really trust your intuition. And that's why you did it right, Brie. You got to know them first, because I will tell you, I've had dozens of partnerships. Most of them have been resounding successes. Some have been spectacular seminars because, by the way, if you don't know, I call failure seminars. That's my stock thing there. But some of them have been seminars because I didn't trust my intuition. And whenever you don't trust your intuition, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Trust it. It's always right, guys. So that's awesome. Yeah. Lots of great tips here.
I agree 1,000% with that. And it's hard when people are like, hey, I've got $1 million.
Yes.
I'll give you $1 million.
But that's the conflict. It's your greed versus your intuition. But trust the intuition. It's not worth the money, my friends. Trust me on this. Ask me how I know, because that's how it works. But let me ask you this, Brie.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Finish your thought. You were going to say something, but I got a question.
Now it's been a few years later into these partnerships, and again with buy and hold. It's not like, if you guys don't get along or something comes up, it's not like you're out of the deal in 6 months.
You're married.
You're married.
Yeah.
And they've been the greatest partnerships, again, because we spent that time up front. So I'm able to make decisions and make calls within the business and not get second guessed because they know me. They know what I'm, where my thoughts.
Well, they know who you are. They know you've got a heart. They know you've got their best interests at heart. I'm sure that you have regular communication with them. And see, guys, that's another critical key. Every time I've had a partnership seminar, when I look back on what happened, it was always it was me trying to communicate, but it was always a breakdown of communication. Their refusal to communicate. Communication is critical in these types of relationships, just like in a marriage. It's the same thing. You got to communicate.
And expectations.
Yeah, and manage expectations. Don't oversell and underdeliver, undersell and overdeliver. And the bottom line, that's basic way to do business, period. So let me ask you this, Brie. Is there a dark time in your journey? Talk about some of your seminars, some of your times you got your nose bloodied and what happened and how you dealt with it. Maybe give us a doozy, like your big one. Because we all have them. Everybody thinks this journey to success is easy, but it's worth it. But you've got to understand you're going to have setbacks. So talk about one of yours.
My setbacks are mainly in relation to Milwaukee.
Okay.
So dealing with the cash flow market, again, it's about setting expectations. So when I went into that market, I came from Chicago, which is, again, AB class, super easy. My tenants call me maybe once, twice a year, tops. The cash flow market is a totally different beast. And my expectations were not realistic when I first went in, which led to me being disappointed or getting myself in situations. And the reality is, in that type of market, the swings are so much higher and lower. It's not an even keeled thing. It's an up or it's down. And
you mean what goes down? Just is it values, rents? What are we talking about?
I mean, just recently I had 10 units vacate all within 30 days. All that needed a lot of work. And I had over $50,000 of running renovations that I had to do, and
do you know why that happened? Was it just the leases expired on the same date, or you just had a bunch of move outs?
It was a variety of things. A few people, I think 3 lost their job and just moved out. A couple, I think 2 we had to evict. A couple were just long-term tenants who were just moving on. But it all happens at once. It doesn't happen one at a time, and so you can get get onto things quite quickly. And that's the reality of that sort of market. So I can go 6 months without a single vacancy across 90-something units. And then I could have 14 vacancies all at 1 month that all need work. So now my staff is overworked because they can't do all 14 at the same time. So now it's taking us, 2 months to get everything ready and leased out. And that's just the reality of it.
And that's your biggest expense in this business, guys. It's turnover. That's why taking care of those tenants is so critical. What would you designate the class of those properties or areas in Milwaukee? Are they C, C minus? What are they?
I call them C class.
C, straight C. Okay.
We do accept Section 8 tenants up there. We just don't have any that are Section 8. But it's definitely a blue collar. Working class, and where if they lose their job and they don't find something quickly, then they're not going to be able to pay rent. It's as simple as that. They don't have the savings to cover them. So that there's a lot of things, especially around the holidays. People get behind and they're not budgeting well, which we try to work with people. But they need to communicate with us about it.
Sure. And that's again, same. When they don't communicate, you have to push forward with an eviction. And so you really want to do everything you can to try to get in front of them and see if you can work something out, if it's possible in that class of property, because that was the bulk of what I did as well. So I'm very, very familiar with that dynamic.
Yeah. So that's where scale comes into play. I think it's super important, especially if you're investing out of state in a C-class market. Having that scale is so incredibly important, where if you've only got 2 or 3 duplexes or whatever, 2 or 3 properties, for some reason, when one tenant turns bad, both tenants turn bad and the whole building vacates. And if that's 1/3 of your portfolio, it's bad.
That's painful. That's very painful. Yeah. And you're right. If you're going to go into a market, the best way to go into a market is to get scale if you can, and not just have 1 or 2 properties. You want to go in there and play for the long game, build a portfolio, get yourself, the ability to have some leverage with property managers, with vendors, with other people that are going to take you seriously, because if you don't, they're going to work for their top clients that have a ton of properties first, and you're going to get pushed to the side. And so
couldn't agree more.
Okay. So, are there, do you, you're a very driven lady, so I want to ask a couple psychology related questions, if you don't mind. Tell me about your self-talk. What do you say to yourself? You're very driven. You're very successful. Tell me some of the things that you say to yourself in this business, or maybe when you get up. I don't know if you've got any morning rituals or anything that you do that you feel has contributed to your drive and your motivation and your success.
I don't.
And you weren't ready for that question, so I'm sorry to throw that at you.
I don't have any specific affirmations that I say to myself, but I trust my gut, and that's what I preach to clients of mine too. Is it all to me goes back to how you sleep at night. Right. And I sleep like a baby at night. I'm not up worrying about what I did, or is this property a bad investment? Because if I have that thought in my head, I don't buy it. It's as simple as that. If I'm worried about, the outcome of something, I just don't get involved in that part of the business. So I find that when I rely 1,000% on my gut instinct, even if it blows up in my face and I was completely wrong, at least I trusted my gut. And that would be, and I can handle that sort of bad decision if it was, if I thought it was mine.
I love that. And, obviously that relates to relationship. No question. We already talked about that, trusting your gut, your intuition. But you know what, guys? And you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. I just got through saying it at my event here. If you build your competence, you immerse yourself in this business, you surround yourself with people, you talk the talk, you learn it, you read my book, you go, do courses, go to Brie's 3-day networking event. Do these things to immerse yourself in this. You will ultimately build your competence to a place where it develops your confidence. And then after that, it starts to develop your ability to have intuition. Okay, so at this point, Brie, you can see a triplex or a 3-family, and you're going to know very, very quickly, if it's almost immediately, if it's a deal. I mean, you get to that point, and that's where you guys need to get. And that only comes from repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill. The more deals you look at, the better you're going to get. The more deals you evaluate, the more relationships you have, the more you immerse yourself in this business. So you can get to that place if you do that, but that's what it takes. You agree?
I couldn't agree more. Totally. All right. Okay. But as a realtor, I said I work with clients to start acquiring property. I always tell them my job at the end of the day is to teach you enough that when you are ready to make an offer on a property, you're not asking for my opinion. You know confidently that is the right decision for you, and it is my job to teach you enough to get to that point. That is. Oh,
that's a fantastic way, and that's why you're so successful, because you base your business model around education, and that's critical. And anyone that sells anything should be doing it from an education-based platform, because that's how you're successful. Fantastic. And you've heard me say it on the show many, many times, guys. Dabblers get crushed. Okay. Do not dabble in this business. Learn the business. Okay. And so that's awesome that you take it from that framework, Brie. So what are you proudest of?
Oh, God. I'm proudest of having the ability to have the lifestyle that I want. Yeah. It's something, it didn't happen overnight. Every year it gets further and further. So last year, my goals were, I don't want to work more than 30 hours a week. I take vacations 8 to 10 weeks a year. And I am, so again, it's about efficiency. So I have 8 LLCs and I technically own 5 businesses. 30 hours a week is not a lot. But being efficient in my work, learning to delegate, right? Spending my time on what's important, spending my time on what drives the business, then allows me to also have the freedom to travel when I want. So all of my businesses are either fully set up or in the process of being set up to the point where if I want to take off, I took off 5 weeks in Europe last year. They need to run on their own. So I also won't get myself involved with the business that requires day-to-day long-term. If it's a 6-month commitment, we're like, hey, I'm taking on this new business, this new business. It's going to require day-to-day for 6 months, but then I can hand it off. That's okay with me. But it cannot be a long-term, like I need to be in Chicago 7 days a week for the next 5 years. I just won't do it.
So you do this via other people on your team. You leverage this. You hire this. How is that what you're saying?
A business. So with the brokerage, I have a team of agents that can go do showings. Right. I handle all of the consulting, all of the problem solving, all of the strategy. But that's something I can do over the phone. Okay. I also don't take in-person meetings. From the time I get up to the time I start work, it's about 5 minutes. And I think in-person meetings are kind of a waste of time. By the time it takes me to shower and put on a dress and then change my dress and then drive, that's 2 hours of my day wasted on something that would have just taken 30 minutes on a phone call.
That's very profound. Now, I will tell you, I love the fact that you do this through a lifestyle filter. So many people, and you guys have heard me say this before, you achieve to be happy, and you're happily achieving. Okay. You're making sure you take time for what's important. And I love the fact that you also mentioned that you focus on what's most important. You utilize the Pareto principle. There's always 20% of what you do that's going to get you 80% of the traction. And so you know where to direct your focus.
So it's been years. It's been years to get me to this place. But it's a constant developing plan, right? And I say every quarter I kind of sit down and look and reflect on the previous quarter. What were my major accomplishments? Where was most of my time spent? And was my time spent there effectively? Is that what's going to lead my business? If not, how do I outsource that? How do I delegate that? How do I free up that time? So,
and you reflect, did you say yearly, or how often do you reflect? I'm sorry?
At least quarterly.
Quarterly. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Well, is there any question I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
No, I think that's it.
Well, you kicked butt. Thank you so much for being on the show, Brie. It was a real treat for me, and you added a ton of value. And all of her contact information will be in the show notes, guys. And thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and then take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. For more resources to connect with us further, please visit our website at lifetimecashflowpodcast.com. Tune in next week for our next show.